We'll get started here in just a second. Before we officially start at 1:15, I want to thank everybody for joining us today for this session. If this is your first session, welcome. If this is not your first session, welcome back. Our presenter today is Michael Matos. He is currently the Education Technology Project Manager for Chicago Citywide Literacy Coalition. Michael has extensive experience in adult education, including 10 years teaching high school before the 20 years that he's dedicated to adult ed. Today, he's going to talk about digital literacy and technology integration, and take it away.
Thank you very much. Let me minimize that. All right, so we're going to talk about everything technology today. And just some little things to remember here. There's actually two chats going, the one right here in the Zoom and the one on the Wahoo app. I also have a Q&A session going on the app where I've already asked one question, but I will ask that question again in case you're not working off the app and just on the Zoom directly, or it's a little cumbersome for you to do it. That's okay. Let me get all this stuff out of the way and get this rolling here. And so what you can do is you can answer them in either place. There's already about 10 or so that have answered. My first question is we're going to start off nice and light and simple, and something that should probably be the same answer for everybody. Is digital literacy important for our adult learners, and important and with a capital I? Okay, so that should kind of lead you to that question. So let me see. Let me see what I have in the chat here. That works great for that question, and like I said, you can also put it in the chat, and I will be asking it again in just a minute or so as I go through this. So I'm just going to put the agenda up there. A lot of things to cover. Some of them I will just briefly talk about, others which I think are a little more important I will go into further. I will also give you a link where you can easily access this presentation, and then also give you an email address where you can access many more of my documents and activities and so on. I shared it in my first presentation. I've already had like a half a dozen requests to share it. So digital literacy. So basically this presentation with all of those things that I had on my agenda back here, it's really split up into two parts. We talk about digital literacy and how do we assess that, how do we build those skills, and then we also talk about technology integration for learning and for other everyday life skills. So talking about digital literacy, so just a nice quote and some things that I've added to the quote. Technology integration is about communicating ideas efficiently, sharing knowledge and information, making learning more engaging, building learning communities, and creating a culture of empowerment. Teachers continue to remain the most important tool because they are the motivators. And in many cases, I do say the innovators, okay? Speaking of digital literacy and digitally literate, more than 32 million US adults are not digitally literate. And I'll talk a little bit more about how we gauge those levels. 16%, so 16% of US adults do not have sufficient comfort or competence with a computer to find a recipe, make a retail purchase, or file taxes online. Of course, there's a lot more that I can add to that of what they don't feel comfortable doing online. So that was my first question. So you can put your response yes or no. You can go to the QA session on the app, or you can put it right in the chat here, and go ahead and introduce yourself too if you haven't, your name, organization, and let me know yes or no. Is digital literacy important for our adult learners? Okay, so now I'll obviously tell you the importance. Why teach adults, adult learners basic tech skills or digital literacy? Technology is everywhere, right? Workplace, post-secondary, daily life. To be literate in this world requires digital literacy skills. We need to kind of prioritize the enhancing, expanding, increasing of these digital literacy skills in response to the changing needs all around us. Why is it important? Well, mentioned some of these already. Applying for a job online, reading the news, online banking, paying bills, searching for information, communicating with others. It's just digital literacy is just an increasingly important part of our basic life and basic literacy skills. And as I mentioned earlier, that definition of literacy includes that the banking and everything else from to social media. So adult basic education is really in a transition mode right now. It is, as the economy and society changes, adult basic education evolves with one common theme, and that's digital literacy. This is what's happening everywhere, and especially now. Emphasis on preparing for transition to employment or higher education, collaboration, um, with an array of institutions and organizations. And as you can see here, for example, as you can see, we have voting there, right? Just requesting your mail-in vote through the internet, or health. Telehealth is a big thing nowadays, and especially nowadays. And it is something that we need to be digitally literate to be able to benefit from these online features. Technology related to employment and readiness in the workplace. Job search is done online. So 70% of all jobs are posted online now. Job applications are online, and that, though I don't have this percentage here because it does change quite a bit. The last estimate was over 70% of those applications are online. Workforce centers, libraries, and other community-based organizations report high demand and assistance in writing resumes and doing job searches and career development and so on. New technology demands in the workplace, they're everywhere, right? So where do we need to be? So the new model is technology integrating technology from supported use to independent use. And I can't say this enough, the underlining skill here is building independence for our learner. Independence to carry on and benefit from those things that are offered by having this digital literacy. And the independence of to continue to learn on their own with everything that is offered at a digital, in the digital realm for free to continue to learn. And as you can see here, for the last one, I'll cover that one. Workers, the last bullet point, workers need to have mastered basic skills threshold for most jobs. So 61% of jobs today require at least basic intermediate computing skills. Okay, so digital literacy standards. I'm going to, in my Q&A, I'm going to put in my next question. Yeah, actually, I will put it in while you guys answer this on here. So, do you refer to and include digital literacy standards when putting together your curriculum? So yes or no in the chat, and I will post it right now on the app. Okay, so it's also on the app, and you could also post it on the chat. So do you refer to and include digital literacy standards when putting together your curriculum? Yes or no? And if you don't know what digital literacy standards are or where to look that up, that's fine. Obviously, that would be a no. I'll just give a minute for that. I see some people have captured it on the app as well, so that's good. Okay, well, let me continue my spiel here with digital literacy. So I'm just going to go back to my quote for the digital literacy standards. Technology should always be used with a clear purpose in mind. Even if a game is played just to break up a long lesson or bring attention to a new topic. Remember, technology is one tool in your toolkit, and sometimes a pen and paper might be best. So I know I'm the technology person, but I'm still making sure that that is still available, right? So basic computer digital literacy standards. Um, what are these standards? Which ones are you familiar with, and so on? So they're guides, right? They're guides to developing, as the quote says there, interactive subject-based learning through technology and building student learning independence. There's that word again. What's in these literacy standards? We have life skills, we have employment preparation, we have transition to higher education, and a lot more. Here are some examples of standards. Now, I'm not going to go into every single one of these, but I just wanted to share where you can find these. So North Star Digital Literacy Assessment has their standards together with their curriculum and so on. ISTE also has their standards for students. As we look at just some background on standards, over at links.ed.gov, there's a nice professional development resource talking about standards, and their collection also has some other standards. Tech.ed.gov also brings us this article here on reimagining the role of technology in education from 2017. And it talks about that national education technology plan and the standards that they're looking at. We also have Technomedia, which came out with standards for when the GED was made all internet or all web-based. And it just has a nice list of these standards that students should be proficient at before taking the test. So that's not an obstacle at test time. Technology skills checklist, which this one I have from our own Illinois Community College board. And this is really just a checklist that takes you through, I think, like 3 pages of things that your students should be able to perform on their own to have these digital literacy skills. Okay, so once again, once you get this particular presentation, I'll give you the link to it. You'll be able, these are all links and hyperlinks in the presentation, and you'll be able to go right to these sources. Okay, so integrating technology in WIOA. So WIOA has a section where they talk about the need to integrate technology in WIOA. So, and I'm not going to go into this, it's very brief. It talks about the supports the use of technology for the improvement of teaching, learning, professional development, productivity, and systems efficiencies. And it also highlights the fact sheet that it has for Title II, which is obviously adult education and family literacy. And it also supports the role that technology plays in supporting and creating, this high performing system. So very important to keep that in mind, and also take a look at it, and you'll see it's like I said, it's brief, but it does post those activities and basically like a list of goals or standards or skills that are recommended. Okay, so now I just want to go through a little bit because as we're looking through digital literacy and how to start implementing digital literacy skills and to improve those digital literacy skills, we want to make sure we have a game plan and we want to make sure that we understand what we're doing. So my next question, which I'm also going to put in the Q&A, is are you using a blended learning model for your classes? So I'm going to put that in here as well. So in the chat, you can put yes or no. And also in the app, if you like, I did put that question in there as well. So, and if we look at the definition for blended learning, blended learning has a lot to do with, using in-person classroom settings as well as digital content, whether it's in a classroom setting or virtually. And it doesn't exclude the paper and pen or anything like that. It also tends to want to incorporate not only educational training, but career training that's also kind of put into this blended learning definition. And neither form of learning, functions as a supplement for the other. They kind of work together. The same kind of materials and skills are delivered whether virtually or in class, but they're not redundant. So it also, because of the way it's set up, it gives a student control over its pace and even in some cases their learning path. And it's really, blended learning is not really that new. It's been in use since the 1990s. It's just that obviously now with COVID and everything else going on around us and the trend towards virtual learning or more virtual learning, the blended concept has really become popular. And of course, there are other concepts like hybrid. I know that there's a new one called Flex, and there's another one called Ultra Flex, and we can talk about that the rest of the day. But once again, if any of those things you need to know about, we can ask those questions later, or you can, once you're sharing my docs, I have a lot of information on that in my documents as well. So key components for digital literacy lessons, very basic stuff. So I'm going to go through this section real quick. Mouse and keyboarding, using the internet, manipulating documents and computer drives, those are the very basics. And this is how I like to arrange my class. So a digital literacy assessment. What digital literacy assessment tool do you use to gauge learner digital skills? And that is my my next question. And I'm also going to put it in the app as well. And I'm sorry, I spelled gauge there wrong. It is correct on the app. So once again, what digital literacy assessments do you use to gauge learner digital skills? So if you've used North Star before, or if you've used a Microsoft, off the main Microsoft page, where there is an assessment, or you've developed your own maybe through Google Forms or even a hard copy that works with parts of where you're identifying parts, or you're explaining the keyboard, or explaining how to use a mouse pad. Um, those kinds of things. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about this digital assessment. So in these digital assessments, you usually have, like, for example, a few people have put in North Star as what they use for their digital literacy assessment. Um, and that's great. That's highly recommended. They have a parts identification. They have things where you identify a mouse pad, or even a mouse. If people still use those anymore. A touch pad, a touch screen. All of these things are really considered under the realm of mousing skills. Keyboarding skills. How do we evaluate that? And if you are using these assessments, that's what they use. The mobile devices. How do we navigate mobile devices? How do we download an app? How do we set up our email? Those kinds of things. How do we make sure we adjust our microphone or our headphones? How do we save things, names, locations? All of those things have a lot to do with not only as a desktop setup, but also as a mobile device. Demonstrating customizing skills. How do we find something that we just changed and renamed? Where is it? Where does it go? All of these things are part of demonstrating these customizing skills, which are actually a little higher level. Okay, and then what I also like to look at is just the 5 basics when we're looking at curriculum design, lesson planning, and instruction for these digital literacy skills, and then later the technology integration. So it needs assessment. Now that needs assessment, as we talked about. Some people are using North Star. Some people are creating their own Google Forms and asking those questions. We need the plan. What do we need to teach? And in many cases, hopefully incorporate it in our subject matter learning, so we can continue to learn our subjects, continue to learn more English or more social studies or more science or more math, but at the same time honing in on some of those digital literacy skills that we saw we needed some help with. Well-planned and detailed instruction for all activities. Let's let our students know every step so they can follow those steps and gain these skills. Careful attention to sequence of content. So reinforcement, so from simple to complex. And make sure to explain things to students. Don't just go up to their computer or their tablet or their Chromebook and then just do it for them. And that's how you think that they're going to learn. No. Explain it, model it, continue to model it, continue to model it. And notice how I repeated that a few times. And then let them practice it on their own. Learning by doing. Understanding of new knowledge is enhanced when they apply it. Okay, practice their newly acquired skills and attitudes, and then reflect on what they have just done. Reflect. How is this going to be worthwhile? Wow, what can this do for me? Or I think does nothing for me. Well, let's figure that out. Okay, teamwork. Using small groups for encouragement. We're all, as instructors, especially the English as a second language instructors, they're good at putting people into groups and putting those the students that can lead groups and know the stuff a little more than the others do in that same group, so they can help each other and there's encouragement. We can do that. We can do that even with desktops, move the desks around. But obviously with Chromebooks and tablets and laptops and some of these other functions, we could group people still and help to encourage each other and still work in those traditional manners that we've done in the past. Of course, the individual building, when you individualize this, you're building accountability and showing how they know. So there's always room for that as well. So what I've done is I've broken up all of these skills into three parts. So basic, intermediate, and proficient. And that's what I've leveled it at. Many of my students come into classes with, and I'm not only my English as a second language students, but even my adult basic ed students and natives, and even my GED classes and my adult secondary education classes. They come in with even below basic foundational computer literacy skills. And we try to get the biggest amount to that intermediate level, that computer literacy and competency beyond that foundation level, which is that basic. That makes them more employable, okay, and ready for secondary education. I've got a number of instructional tips here. You know, patience is essential. Expect mistakes, misunderstandings, you know, and fears about using the computer. And this is probably going to be some of our first obstacles. Teacher-led, teacher hands-off approach. It's kind of like what I talked about before. Model, then practice. Also, I mentioned step-by-step instruction, as I mentioned. You know, be positive and encouraging. Contextual learning is great for this because obviously you can incorporate these digital literacy skills and all of that. Goal setting with your students. What would they like to be able to do with better digital skills? Let's look at that and build off of that. Use picture-driven resources whenever possible, and I'll show you some examples of that. And progression will come slowly, but you know, students can only learn by doing, and will be imperfect until they master it, right? So it's a natural. Students may be frustrated by this, but they may need you to remind them that it's all part of learning, and it's all part of something even more important, building that independence. Okay. Real quick, I'm going to just talk a little bit about some of these options that we have. So what real-time communication tool or tools do you use with your learners? So real quick, if you can put in, and I gave you some examples there. Now, I'm pretty sure with all the communication tools that are out there, that there are more than what I put in there. So in the chat or on the app, and I'm putting it in the app right now. Oh, it came out in really big letters in the chat, in the app, but in the app as well. Give me an idea. What is your favorite, or a couple of them? What are you using to communicate with your students? So once again, you can put that in the chat or in the app. And I just put some examples in there for you. And if there's any others, please write them in there as well. I'm sure that everyone on this call is probably using some form of real-time communication. I know that we probably just had lunch, so let's keep mobile. Don't use your whiteboard drawing, because it does come up on ours. Just go ahead and put it in the chat. And this is some really good insight, and hopefully these recordings will be posted, and I'm sure the Q&As will be in there as well. And for the Q&As, you can go back to your app, I believe, at any time and go and be able to look at these things, as well as the chat that's going on in the Q&A, sorry, on the app. All right, good. We got some great ones here. There's more coming in that are definitely on my screen, so that's perfect. All right, let's continue. So I'm just going to go over a few. So we have Remind. So if you haven't used Remind, I have a link right on here, hyperlinks you to Remind. Tells you a little bit about Remind. two-way messaging, activating active engagement, bringing meaningful interaction, a great way to get your students involved and to communicate with them. Seesaw, if you haven't used Seesaw, it is unfortunately, except for pilots and stuff like that, you do pay for it, but it's a great tool to use, where it's basically like having a Google Classroom within this one app. So it incorporates a lot of these other things, as well as some very good communicating tools. WhatsApp, which many of you have put on there as what you use. Very simple to use. It is secure. I know there's a lot of questions about that. And it's available on phones as well. So, and the calling is free, and it's Android and iOS based. So I've used it on my MacBook Air. On your computers, you can use it. So those are just a few, and as we mentioned, and as many of you are mentioning, there's quite a few others. Explore them, take them for a ride, see how they work out, and then if you like them, if they're easy, you think they'll be easy for your students to use, go ahead and do so. Another aspect of teaching digital literacy is teaching digital citizenship. So there's a digital tattoo that kind of identifies you, that as soon as you get on the internet, as soon as you open up an account, an email, something, that starts to develop that tattoo. You want to make sure that you show your students how, yes, there is that concern, but how do we protect that? How do we go at this with the learning that you can protect your identity and get all the benefits out of using the computer and using the internet for your needs. So as you can see, it talks about passwords. This is Passwords 101. And it's a YouTube video, very good source, and it lets you know what's the best way to develop passwords. It's been used quite a bit. It's been around for a little while. Another way is how to create a secure password. Is another YouTube video, which is a little newer, which I use quite a bit in developing this, this how do I protect my identity and my digital tattoo. And this is a great site from Canada, which talks about the digital tattoo, and it also gives you some activities and how do we protect that, how do we connect, learn, work, publish, and still keep it protected. Something that is very useful. Google has developed a whole series. It's basically a whole curriculum on this, with activities and PowerPoints that you can use, or slides in there, in the Google world. It talks about the Be Internet Awesome vocabulary, and then it's got a bunch of educator resources. And once again, these are links here. So once you get this PowerPoint or this slide, this presentation, you'll be able to link onto all of those. So quite a few of these options for you to incorporate this into your digital literacy instruction, because one of those fears that many of our students have is this whole identity loss when you're on the internet. Okay. So one of the things that I try to incorporate is navigating online resources. So navigating online resources is important, and the government is, a lot of the .gov websites where you can find benefits and apply for things that the government might be able to help you with. The government is actively trying to make a lot of these websites easier to use. So even at those very low level digital literacy skills, you might be able to still access this information and apply for what you need. And this is a very nice report on that coming from Bloomberg, which talks about the Code for America and how do we change the way that we look at technology to help us in our own world every day. So my next question is, um, do you develop activities to help students navigate online resources? And the example is, career, government, health, work, or anything more. So if you can answer that in the chat, yes or no, I will also put it into. Okay, it's also really big again in the um, on the app as well. So do you develop activities to help students navigate online resources, career, government, health, work, and more? Believe it or not, you'll be a pioneer because yes, we don't want to recreate the wheel for a lot of these things, but there aren't too many of these. So what you might like to do is, here's some examples. So what I've been doing is creating activities that help our students navigate particular websites depending on the need. One that I have been working on a lot is the Chicago Public Schools has a website for parents. It is not the easiest website to use. So what I've done is develop activities for those parents to be able to work through these activities and practice and redo and do again and do again on the computer. So then when they go to this website and sign in with their personal information and so on, they're able to navigate and use the website to its full potential, and obviously for their kids. So this one is healthcare.gov. Obviously, if you've ever filled out an application for healthcare or the so-called Obama plan, it's cumbersome. I mean, they actually for a while had navigators to help you, digital navigators for the healthcare.com to help people be able to complete these forms. Medicare.gov, many of our students need help and assistance working through this and understanding what are the benefits. How can I apply for them? Illinois and many states, and I believe Ohio does too. I didn't really look into that. I know like Georgia and Kentucky does, and some of the other states have digital libraries where you can check out books for free. And it's statewide, not only within your area. So it won't be your own public library within your city or town. It's a statewide, and they're delivered to you free digitally. So you look into that digital library for your state. This one, just looking at the Illinois Department of Labor, but obviously you can look at the Ohio Department of Labor. And as we look at all these issues with unemployment and stuff like that, and how do we file for these benefits and everything that's going on with the glitches and filing and so on, let your students know what it looks like on the phone. Build activities where they can go on their phone and access these benefit sites and how they can work with that. Okay, benefits.gov, which has a lot of these things that I just talked about under one umbrella, under one website. Just some other things related to, obviously, you guys also have a WorkNet center as well in Ohio, and as well as many other states, where you can find an employer, job seeker, virtual job fairs, and so on. Show your students how to use these portals. Very important. And once again, you're teaching those digital literacy skills. And in this case, it's not where you're teaching English, but you are. You're not teaching math, but in some cases you are. But you're also teaching these very broad life skills to access the computer. Now, I also have some activities that you can find for free as well, besides creating your own activities. If you go to Everyday Life by GCF Global, which is the Goodwill site, gcflearnfree.org. You can start there at gcflearnfree.org. They have a section, it's called Everyday Life. A lot of these activities that I just mentioned are, they give you ideas on how to create those activities. Applied Digital Skills, Google's Applied Digital Skills has a lot of everyday life skills activities, everything from banking to budgeting, to planning a vacation. A lot of these things are in there that build these digital literacy skills that help to complete applications, search the internet, finding what is useful on the internet and what is not a hoax. Okay. Links also has a whole section on filling out medical and family literacy family history forms. And it has research and it has other activities, and you can go on there and download these forms and practice them. You can alter them, add your own information, make the words on the forms more towards the levels that you're teaching. Once again, some great resources that are there already. But as I mentioned earlier, in some cases, there are things that you might have to put together yourself. But as soon as you start putting these together, like you've done in the past, you build a library and then you're able to use them again with your next class. Practice job applications online. There's quite a few of these where you can practice these online. They don't go anywhere. They're just practice. But you're able to do all of these and functions, as you can see here, that are digital literacy functions, and learn how to do this online and hopefully get to the point where you can do it on your own. You see there's quite a few of them, and some of them even have a where it showcases the how to search online for these job ads and stuff like that. So definitely keep those in mind. And then I just wanted to point this out. I mean, there's so many learning tools out there, and I don't want to overwhelm you. I just want you to know that they're there. And the more that you explore on your free time, when you have some time, and put into your pantry, right, to use later in a recipe, and that recipe being your lesson plan, and those activities being these learning tools. That's where the activities are coming from. And you have a mishmash, keeps people engaged because they're not all coming from the same textbook. Okay. So that's really what I'm trying to give you here, is so you could build up that pantry and be able to go to things and bring things out and keep your students engaged, because that's what keeps students coming to your classes or your Zoom. So just some digital literacy websites that I'm going to suggest, and I'm going to go through this pretty quick. If you're not familiar with digitallearn.org, it's a whole family of digital learning, all free. And as you can see here, these tests are the ones that you can take. There's quite a few of them. You can do this in English or Spanish. One of the nicest examples, and not from because I'm from the area, but one of the nicest examples that I've seen with the National Digital Learn, and taken by, and actually the Digital Learn started in Illinois, further in a small town just south of here, in a small library. The Digital Learn Chicago is basically taken that platform and incorporated some everyday type of subjects within the learning, like basic searches and so on, in that. And once again, it could be done in English or Spanish. The Digital Learn also has tools for learners, like a bibliography and some other activities, YouTube videos and so on. You can find that on that page. And once again, you'll if you want access to this, these are all hyperlinked. It also has a tools and resources for trainers. That means the instructors, right? The teachers. It has quite a few of that, but it also could be used with the students. E-learning industry, a great resource for, it's an online community. You know, it has articles, concepts, software, and the site is free, and some of the things they post on there are free, and it gives you a good explanation on how to use them and access them. GCF Learn Free, which I've already mentioned a few times. I used to use, 15 years ago, I used this site to teach whole technology classes, and it's all free. It's updated periodically. It's some great stuff in there. The Spanish version, Aprende Libre, which is the GCF version of that. The global version, because there is, they do have a site that take you to a site in French, Russian, Arabic, Chinese, Indonesian, Norwegian, and there's a few other languages they recently added. Okay, and then there's a YouTube channel. So the YouTube channel, it's all in English, but they're building. They're up to about 190 topics, and they keep adding more. And that is their YouTube channel, and it's very informative and very detailed. Most of the videos they have on there could be used to start off a lesson. Another website that I use quite a bit is called In Pictures. It's a tutorial, and it's all pictures. There may be 1 or 2 words in each frame, but most of it is 99% pictures. And it's obviously great for those that are lower level English language learners, and it's completely free. It's by Intel, which big corporation. And North Star Digital Literacy I mentioned before, and their guides. Now they have a built-in curriculum now. And I did not update this next slide, but this next slide is actually the learning materials that were on the St. Paul Public Library are now built into the North Star learning curriculum. So you assess them in North Star, find out where they're at, where you can use the North Star curriculum. And North Star also now has a variety of other places where you can go to basically scaffold the instruction until you're able to give them a North Star assessment. North Star assessments are about 4th grade and up. So if you have a very low level and maybe an English language learner that's pretty low in the learning process, you might want to scaffold them with some GCF Learn Free, maybe in their own language, and build them up to that first assessment. So the St. Paul Public Library is now, it's another organization that has picked up a lot of the material that they are using also in Minnesota through the Minnesota Literacy Council, I believe. And I did not change that yet, but I will. Tech Boomers is another site, and it's free educational website, to teach older adults, but it could be used for much of our population. Free videos, articles, things that are coming that are free, and they tell you about it. They even give you alerts and so on. It depends on how you sign up for it. So that's quite a few of those. And then just to give you some websites on other, like these are all mousing practice, and it works with a touchpad, even screen. So it works with a lot of different what we consider to be mousing. All free, and these are typing practice, both whether you're using a regular size keyboard or a smaller version, or those pocket keyboards that we have now, or of course your phones, and this is free practice with that. And then other computer practice, everything from looking at places that let you take practice tests for online certification and employment tests, and they're just practice. There's also one in here where you're able to take the practice test that's given to join the military. which is also on it's also on the computer as well. So just a lot of nice, very involved, free sites. Mobile technology integration. So very important. Some of the studies we've done have obviously given that 25% of learners reported access to computers at home, while 88% of the learners had access to their mobile phone. And while some of those skills were lacking on a computer at home, some of the skills needed, maybe not production skills, but some of those other skills like texting and manipulating apps and stuff like that, many of our students had those skills already on their mobile devices. So that's good to know when we're, you know, giving them activities to do and allowing them to use their phone, right, to use it. Maintaining accounts is many times easier on your phone. The apps keep you signed in most cases, and you're able to not, you know, the main thing that happens is you forget that password and can't get into your program or where you left off. You know, Americans check their phones an average of every 12 minutes. So 80 times a day, your head's kind of buried into your phone. You know, a lot of us struggle when we go more than 10 minutes without checking our phones. So these are our learners, as you know, then, and this is how we could engage them, right? You know, there's even a word out there for this. Nomophobia is a fear of being without your phone or losing your signal. And I know that many of us have maybe looked that way when we've lost our signal in a very important phone call, or our phone battery ran out and we didn't have a way to charge it. Lots of different things. And so I've looked in a lot into some of these mobile apps and just some recommendations. Amrita Learning for Reading. This is a great app. It's still free. And you can even ask the organization through their main site if you can have a student monitoring system that goes along with it. The only problem right now is that it's only on Android. Hopefully soon it will be on iOS as well. Autocognita, great phonics, great alphabet building and fluency. And I also believe that this is still free, and they were going to put it on iOS. I'm not sure if it is, but worth looking into. Once again, the links are all in here. CellEd, their functions of really working with your texting skills and answering questions while you text is just a great feature, and definitely something to look into as well. They have a few different learning apps. Duolingo, many of you use, very friendly on your phone, and a lot of it is free, Android or iOS. Google Classroom, once again, a very friendly phone mobile use. It's for creating, distributing, grading, communicating, right, with your students. But don't forget its mobile functions. And with the Google Classroom, you can incorporate a lot of these apps. One of my favorite apps, which, because it's a Google Classroom and it comes from the Google store, and right now it's only on Android, but I believe that if hopefully they've done it already, it will be an iOS model. It's King of Math. And it's completely free, and using it through your Google Play, incorporating it in your classroom, it's just a great tool to use and have. Learning Upgrade. So, you know, as it says, from kindergarten to adult, it covers literacy, ESL, math, ABE, HSE, and it does have practice for GED, ABE, ASE. You know, and now it has a digital literacy component where it has practice for digital literacy skills. It's not a free app, but and it is on iOS and Android, but take a look at it. It might be something worthwhile. Moodle, where you can develop your own platforms and incorporate a course management system where you have a student management system. Takes a little bit more work to incorporate all of this, probably a little bit more bells and whistles than you would have in a Google Classroom, but definitely something to look into if that's what you're looking for. Padlet, a way to collaborate as well. A Google Classroom, but it's got a lot more where you're using web pages, and you're developing boards with questions and even boards with examples. And then just some other apps that I've used. This one's a game and developed by People for Words. It's called Codex. Photomath, which is part of a huge math series of apps, which lets you take a picture of a problem, even if it's drawn in, and you're able to answer that. But it also gives you the steps so you can teach with it as well. Plickers, where you're using an activity to use a formative assessment, and you can do it on your phone, which is why it's in this section, which is very phone friendly, as well as Poll Everywhere does exactly what it says. Just some other platforms, School Fuel, and Storyboard that, and Wakelet, which is many of us have been using as well. It just has all of these things: photos, web pages, podcasts. You can create all into one learning center, basically, for your students. Little quick part here about using game show apps and websites. There's game show apps everywhere. We've got Kahoot, we've got eQuiz Show, Quizalize. If you haven't heard about some of these, take a look at them, because it's not only Quizlet and Kahoot that's out there. Quizzes, which is becoming very popular. Reason why: it's completely free. Kahoot and Quizlet, you have to pay for some of those options, but take a look at these. Some subject websites. I have these split up by, most 99% of them are free. These are some math websites that I use quite a bit. Some reading websites, some science websites, social studies websites, writing websites. And then, of course, especially with the project that I run in Illinois, which is called the Illinois Digital Learning Lab, we collaborate between currently it's 30 organizations statewide, from the very north to the very south of the state. And we collaborate with learning how to assess, how to deliver digital literacy, and then how to integrate technology into the learning. But obviously a big part of it is, because we're working with instructors, is how to build this professional development of the instructors. Not only of the instructors, but of the organization as a whole. And then I obviously point out some of these professional development sites where you might be able to get some free professional development, and continue to learn and continue to build those skills to deliver the learning via technology. We put together this last year. It was we call it the Labapalooza, and if you have access to my documents, you can find out how everyone reported back what they learned out through the last year's experiment. This is our third year that we're doing this. We call it a lab because it is an experiment. And for the Illinois Digital Learning Lab, we not only explore different practices, but we explore different tools, tech tools and resources. And some of those tech tools and resources were part of everything from VR headsets to Google Minis in the classrooms or in different groups. We used smart boards we can talk to, smart boards that we can go and draw on and work through different things. We just used a number of tools and experimented on engagement and building that confidence. So really what we were looking at was instructor efficacy and learner efficacy. That was our main hypothesis, and our goal and our metrics were around that. So that a lot of this information, a lot of these sites and so on were shared through this 3 years of experimenting with the Illinois Digital Learning Lab. So I have on here, that's my email address if you want me to share everything that I have in my library, which is hundreds, if not thousands of activities in different subjects. And then that is how you can access the presentation. So bit.ly/digital learning blended. Okay, so that is how you can access that. And I guess now I got a minute or so if there's any questions. I know that we've been looking at questions here, been trying to answer some of them.
So far, I don't see any questions in the chat. If anybody would prefer just to unmute and ask a question, we do have a couple moments as I have to get to the next session to moderate. However, I just want to say thank you to Michael. There was a lot of good information there. Sometimes it can feel daunting to kind of build these pieces together, so we're very grateful for what you're able to share.
Thank you all very much for attending, and I'm looking at the chat too and on the app, and I don't see any questions there. I know that I covered quite a bit, but please look at the resources when you have some time, good bedtime viewing or whatever that might mean. Yep.
Thank you.
So I've got one question real quick, just to address Zoom and the security issues that have been addressed with Zoom. You know, though Zoom tries its best to meet any of these security issues, I can't tell you that I haven't been so-called Zoom bombed, because I have been. The best way to do this is to make sure you set up a password, maybe develop a unique password every time, and then share that with your students. I know that it creates another obstacle to getting into the Zoom. If you're having problems with the visual, like the camera, okay, and you're seeing things you don't want to see, then maybe you need to have the camera off. Maybe you unmute people. You could control all of that. So it depends on what your fear is or what your obstacle might be. And Zoom, what's great about Zoom is that once you go into Zoom, you can click all the Zoom lessons that they have and videos and so on. It's almost like a built-in YouTube, and get a lot of these responses right away through their own library. Okay, but it's not something that's easily handled. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending, and feel free to communicate with me through my email. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you.